Bills Mafia. Tonight on the Air Raid Hour postgame show, we are diving into all things Bills Titans. We've got the latest injury updates, major takeaways, and a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is a breakdown you won't want to miss. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Victory Monday edition of the Air Raid Hour, presented by Picasso's Pizza and the Cover One Sports Network. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at The Bills Guys. Joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. And Dave, they scared us early, but the Buffalo Bills came alive in the second half. A 34-0 run to win this football game, 34-10. About the third 3-and-out of the Buffalo Bills offense, I decided to start drinking during Bills games again. I think I sent you guys a picture of my stack of blue lights by the end of this game, but that was a very Jekyll and Hyde performance from the Buffalo Bills this weekend.
It was fortunate that, look, and we talked about the Titans defense coming into the game. Very solid defense as far as yards allowed, especially in the passing game. Where they had struggled was in the, turning the ball over, getting sacks, that type of thing. But a strong defense as far as limiting the yards. And that, that kind of went in their favor early in that game. Of course, early in the game, Amari Cooper drops that one ball and kind of like had that feeling like the Bills couldn't really get out of neutral on offense. And then felt like on the other side, Mason Rudolph was kind of nickel and diming the Bills down the field, a couple long drives for the Titans early on in the game. But the Bills, as they have shown us in this McDermott era, with especially on the defensive side, they are very good at sort of adjusting in game, especially on defense. And they did just that. They end up forcing the 2 turnovers, and then really that sort of death by 1,000 paper cuts that the Titans were trying to employ on the Bills really just didn't end up working out for them. So the Bills go on that 34-0 run, and by the end of it was a relatively stress-free game by all accounts, especially in the second half.
Before we get into an in-depth breakdown of the game, just a couple of news and notes. Injury-wise, 3 Buffalo Bills were injured in the football game: Curtis Samuel, Terrell Bernard, and then late Dorian Williams. Dorian Williams will likely be okay. It was probable for him to return to the game, but he never really had to because of the score. Curtis Samuel and Terrell Bernard, however, are a completely different story. Samuel with his shoulder injury, Bernard with his ankle injury it got rolled up on. No updates from Sean McDermott today. He says they need to do more evaluating, and he's unwilling to even call those injuries day to day at this moment. So not looking good for either of those guys. And I'll tell you what, with each passing play that Terrell Bernard plays for the Buffalo Bills, the more and more he just seems just irreplaceable. Like, the guy is a legitimate difference maker in the middle of that Buffalo Bills defense, and it would really stink not to have him against Seattle.
Yeah, he went down twice in this game, right? And the first time you're like, oh, he was down for a while. He ended up going in for getting checked out for that head injury and came back in, then obviously got his ankle stepped on. It seemed minor, obviously, but tough, like going across the country, sit in that plane, ankle's going to be stiff, right? Like, we'll see. The Buffalo Bills really could use Terrell Bernard against the Seahawks. Kenneth Walker is a beast running the ball, and whether or not they have DK Metcalf or not, and I know we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, Jackson Smith and Jigba running across the middle of the field, Tyler Lockett running across the middle of the field. They would really like to have Terrell Bernard for that game in a tough environment on the road in Seattle.
We got Dennis K coming in saying it was an enjoyable Sunday with the other AFC East results. And that was the second sort of newsworthy thing outside of this, in-depth game review that we're going to do. The Jets lost on prime time. They absolutely imploded once again under Aaron Rodgers and Jeff Ulbrich. The Miami Dolphins lost at the hands of the Indianapolis Colts, and the New England Patriots lost in London against the Jacksonville Jaguars, the lowly Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Buffalo Bills, I think Sal Capaccio was the one doing the research today. When is the earliest anyone's ever clinched a division? And he found the answer to be week 11, but it's trending in a very good direction for the Buffalo Bills when you look at the schedule they have ahead of them, when you look at the other results around the AFC East. But you also sort of, as a Bills fan, get that sort of eerie feeling like, well, every other year it feels like we're chasing and we catch up. This year we're ahead, like start to maybe get that nervous feeling a little bit. Bills have themselves a really nice cushion right now in the AFC East.
They do. I mean, there are some tough games on the horizon. At Seattle is not going to be easy. Obviously, we'll see if Tua's back for this upcoming game in a couple weeks against the Dolphins. Obviously, that would be a big boost for the Dolphins. But and who knows what the Patriots might look like at the end of the season? Those two games at the end of the season with Drake May now looking pretty decent in his first couple starts. I will say this, man. And I've never really been a big fan of his. Mike McDaniel, what was he doing yesterday? Like, honestly, like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, no targets combined in the first half for either of those guys, and they lose to Anthony Richardson and the Colts. And by the way, Anthony Richardson did not look good throwing the football either. So to lose to the Colts like that, pretty bad if you're the Dolphins. And I know they're having quarterback issues, but they have plenty of talent on that offense. And I don't know, Mike McDaniel's shtick, I never really bought into it. I never really thought it was entertaining. And it's kind of a little bit vindicating for me to see him struggle because I just never really thought he was that good. But we'll see. It's a long season. I could be eating crow here in a couple weeks. For now, the Bills are looking good. And the Steelers doing their thing last night on national television. Mr. Unlimited and the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Such an awkward pregame
taking out Aaron Rodgers and the Jets, Devontae Adams, no catches in the second half for that team.
The Jets literally lost to an AI bot at quarterback. Like that's literally what they lost to. One other sort of thing that I find interesting, and I kind of want to get your take on this, and I've read some takes from around the internet today. The current MVP frontrunner through 7 weeks of the season is Patrick Mahomes, who has 6 touchdowns to 8 interceptions. Is like the 21st passer in yards. Like just a very, very bad season for Patrick Mahomes by his standards, by just honestly standards at all. But his team, carried in large part by that Steve Spagnuolo defense, and just the fact that they are probably one of the most disciplined teams you will ever see, coached by Andy Reid. 6-0, Patrick Mahomes is the MVP frontrunner with those statistics. When you have a guy like Josh Allen, who's 5-2 in 2.5 games in the lead in his division, hasn't thrown a pick, one of 6 quarterbacks to ever not throw a pick through the first 7 weeks. What's the deal, as Jerry Seinfeld would say? What's the deal?
You asked me before the season started if Josh Allen had 45. I can't remember the exact question, but the question was asked, like, what does Josh Allen need to do to win the MVP? And if he has these numbers, will he win it? And I said, no, he won't, because this is just not how it goes in the NFL anymore. We saw Lamar Jackson win the MVP last year because his team had the best record in the conference. This has turned into the quarterback on the team with the best record. And we always say, and we fully agree with Bruce Nolan on this, like wins are not a quarterback stat. And that Kansas City Chiefs team is winning. He's making plays, but it's the defense largely. And he's been obviously buoyed by guys like Kareem Hunt as well, coming in and helping out. Now they've had injuries as well. I get that. I'm not going to take that away from the Chiefs. Losing Rashee Rice was big for them. But and losing Pacheco was big for them. But the fact of the matter is that he is not playing like an MVP of the league. His team happens to be 6-0, and that's the only reason. So if you're a betting person and you want to like kind of think about who's going to win the MVP, typically just go to the quarterback who has the best record, team who has the best record.
All right. Now let's shift gears to our one big thing. And this is one thing that we want to take away from this football game. There are hundreds of things that we want to talk about over the course of the next hour here, but it's our challenge every week to whittle it down to the one big thing to lead off every show. Dave, what is your biggest takeaway from this Buffalo Bills 34-10 win over the Tennessee Titans?
I have a feeling we're probably going to end up talking about the same thing here because, look, it was only 19 snaps. It was 35%. I said 25 to 30 was kind of what I was hoping for Amari Cooper, newcomer Amari Cooper. 25 to 30 snaps was what I was hoping. 19, just sort of on the lower edges of that, but also he did kind of get nicked up a little bit, I think, at some point during the game, but he did come back in regardless. Amari Cooper kind of being a guy that now can be a go-to weapon for this team, I think, and building that chemistry and showing that chemistry already with Josh Allen through just one game. That's only going to improve over time, right? And him being a mentor for guys like Keon Coleman, him putting less pressure on guys like Curtis Samuel, even who really hasn't been part of this offense at all. Less pressure on a guy like Khalil Shakir, who did his thing yesterday too, by the way. But really, it just puts a lot less pressure on every other receiver in that receiving room. And to me, it just, when you decrease the pressure of each individual player then below him, it just makes, I think it's going to make everyone else that more effective with their touches. And by the way, I think it also helps Dalton Kincaid, who had a very good game himself as well.
Yeah.
So to me, it's not just about Cooper and sort of his stats and what he did, but it's how he helped the rest of the team. You saw Keon Coleman have a monster yardage game. And we talked about in the pregame, having Amari Cooper in, does that allow Keon Coleman maybe to get matched up on more CB2s than CB1s? And that is going to be the case now going forward. And I think we saw some of the fruits of that yesterday. So to me, the one big thing has to be Amari Cooper's immediate contribution, not just for himself, but for the rest of the receiving corps.
Yeah, I'm with you. I had it right here in my notes. Amari Cooper showing the benefits of everybody moving down a roll. And kudos to Keon Coleman earlier this week when asked by Andy Young of Spectrum News, what do you think about Amari Cooper coming in? He said, hey, it's like another person, another income entering the household, somebody else to help pay the bills, to take the pressure off of everybody else in the room, to help everybody else be the best version of themselves. And you saw that on the football field on Sunday, even though he only played sort of 19 snaps in this football game. And another thing that you saw was a big four kind of separating themselves. Cooper had 4 for 66 and a touchdown. Keon Coleman had 4 for 125. Could have had a touchdown there. He kind of bobbled it a little bit. Depends on who you ask whether or not that was a touchdown in the end zone on that back shoulder throw. But for Keon Coleman, the yards after the catch was notable. I mean, he leads all rookies with 10 yards after the catch, averaging 10 yards after the catch, just a phenomenal number from him. Then you have Khalil Shakir, 7 for 65. He was just an absolute extension of the run game. There was one drive there in the second half where he was essentially the running back, and Josh Allen was just dumping the ball off to Khalil Shakir, and he was going to work his yards after the catch. Something we talked about seemingly for the last 2 off seasons was super notable. And then Dalton Kincaid, 3 for 52, and 2 of his biggest grabs came on third down, right? And they set us up really nicely in the red zone. The big four of Cooper, Coleman, Shakir, and Kincaid were targeted on 25 of Allen's 33 throws. That is something you absolutely love to see. This is what we've been looking for.
Yeah, it is what we've been looking for. And I get it. Like maybe Cooper wasn't on the field for some of those big plays, but it still has an effect on the team as a whole, right? You had built up some confidence in that passing game. You had loosened that Titans defense up a little bit. And the confidence and momentum in pro football is a real thing, right? Look at what just happened in this Bucks Ravens game. Bucks marching down the field, throwing interception, right? Next thing you know, Lamar Jackson's getting the Ravens on top. So momentum is a real thing. And the Bills building that confidence in the passing game, whether or not he was on the field for some of those plays, still matters because that Titans team then has to take a step back. Maybe they're on their heels a little bit because Josh Allen's in a rhythm and he's got confidence and he's hit some throws, and like that can really make a difference. And we saw that early in the game, how it could snowball the other way in those on those 3 and outs. So it just takes a couple plays to get it going sometimes, and it can really start to open things up. So those guys I think are going to be fun pair. Like Cooper is a very sort of quiet reserve guy. Coleman
Mhm.
has a little bit more maybe outgoing personality to him, which is interesting because he's the younger guy. Coleman's the vet, so or Cooper's the vet. So it'll be a very interesting dynamic how those two guys kind
Mhm.
of feed off each other. The up and coming player versus the vet, really successful veteran in Cooper.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see too. And another thing that's like I think notable, right? Like the Buffalo Bills trade for Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper is like name recognition. But I don't think anyone really is considering Amari Cooper a top 5 or even top 10 wide receiver in the National Football League anymore. This narrative that like Josh Allen needs a star receiver, you're getting a really, really good receiver in Amari Cooper who's adding to the room and he's moving everyone down. But I don't think he's a guy who's really on the level of those star receivers that people, especially national people, want to claim that like Josh Allen needs in order to be successful. And on top of that, like you just hear the things that Nick Saban says about Amari Cooper and the things that he can teach young players like Keon Coleman. I'm just really excited to have him in this room for the remainder of the season. And as the season progresses, obviously start to observe exactly how Amari Cooper is playing. And then you got to start to have the conversation about whether or not you want to give this guy some term because his contract is up at the end of the season and he is 31 years old.
Yeah, I mean, I think if he produces pretty well for this team throughout the regular season, you get towards the end of the season, be comfortable kind of handing out a 1 or 2 year deal if he'd be open to that to come back. And I mean, I think with the rules, with how long he's been in the league, I think the most the Bills can get back in a comp pick if he signs elsewhere is a 5th rounder. So,
Mhm.
I mean, depending on how he contributes, which it looks like through one game, it's going to be a pretty steady contributor, a pretty important contributor. He's a guy I would bring back for 1 or
Yeah.
2 years. Probably 2 would be my, preference.
All right. Before we move on to our next talking points, our next segments, a quick word here from our sponsor.
What's up, y'all? Khalil Shakir here. When I want Buffalo pizza, it's got to be Picasso's.
Khalil Shakir. Your team, our pizza. Picasso's. This is Buffalo Pizza.
Yes, this episode is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza, 4 convenient locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Picasso's Pizza has been serving Buffalo's best pizza since 1980. Whether you're a local or across the country, you can enjoy their delicious pizza delivered fresh to your door. Visit picassospizza.net to place your order today. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, Dave, looking at some of the data every week here, we track things like complementary football, toxic differential. I'm really excited to get into the toxic differential in a moment because there were some things there that really stuck out to me. But let's start with the complementary football tracker because this is a Sean McDermott coach football team. So we got
Mhm.
to start with the complementary football. The
Got to.
Buffalo Bills in this game lost time of possession to the Tennessee Titans. They had 32.46 minutes of possession to the Bills, 27.14 minutes of possession. But the Buffalo Bills had far superior average starting field position. They started at their 34-yard line on average, whereas the Titans started at their 25-yard line. And the Buffalo Bills had 3 turnovers or forced 3 turnovers, an interception, a fumble, and that big 4th and 1 stop past the 50-yard line, that turnover on downs. And they protected the football, did not turn it over at all. So at the end of the day, the Buffalo Bills won 2 of those 3 major complementary football categories, and they are now 4-1 this season when doing so, winning 2 or 3 of those 3 categories, 0-1 when losing.
Yeah, and I know, that's 2 of 3, and the time of possession was in the Titans' favor, but that was really a tale of 2 halves on the time of possession. We, had the group chat help fact check me on this. Titans had nearly 20 minutes in possession in that first half, which is absolutely crazy. So the Bills only had 10 in the first half, but then 17 in the second half, obviously for the Bills having the 27 versus the 12, right? 12 or 13 for the Titans in the second half. So a 4 minutes swing in differential from for the Bills in that second half. So again, while overall the Titans did hold the ball more, they were also a lot. They also had much fewer yards per play. I think it was like 4.3 yards per play for the Titans. And Mason Rudolph was throwing a lot of completions to tight ends and of that nature. So it didn't surprise me a ton that at the end of this game, the Titans still came out with a higher time of possession. But the Bills did close the gap a bit in that second half. So 2 for 3. And honestly, it's almost like a 2.5 because the Bills did win that time of possession there in the second half.
You look at toxic differential, and this one was mind-blowing to see the stark contrast between the two teams. The Titans had 3 10-plus yard runs. They only had 1 pass that went over 15 yards, no turnovers. So they had 4 toxic differential plays. The Buffalo Bills, 3 10-plus yard runs, 3 turnovers, and then a whopping 8 passes went 15 plus yards. That is huge. And it's stark contrast from some previous games, whether it was yards after the catch or connecting downfield. The Buffalo Bills were getting explosives in the passing game. They were plus 10 in toxic differential. They are now 4-1 on the season when winning toxic differential, 0-1 when losing.
Yeah, and you had 5 different players accounting for that 8 toxic differential plays on offense. So you have Coleman with a long of 57, Cooper 27, Shakir 20, Kincaid 25, and then you had a 22-yard Ray Davis run. So you have
James Cook with the 11-yard touchdown.
11-yard run and 11. Yeah, so that's 6 different guys accounting for those 8 toxic differential plays on offense, which tells me like you can kind of have an everyone eats mentality a little bit, because these guys, like especially Coleman and Shakir with their yards after catch ability, and Cooper now with his amazing route running, you have a situation where it doesn't all have to come through air yards, right? We've seen, as much as we want to like knock Mahomes for some of the stuff that he does, like the reason why he's been so good as well, not just because of the great plays he makes, but he's letting his guys do the work for him. Brock Purdy, same way in San Francisco, has the last couple of years let these guys do a lot of work for him after the catch. So it would be great if we could do that as well for Josh, so it doesn't all have to come through air yards. And then obviously when he does need to unload it through the air, he can, because he's got the arm to do it. But it is nice to see some of these guys actually being able to do this on their own. And this is something that we also envision for Curtis Samuel, but obviously got hurt in this game, so we'll see. But the Bills have guys that can do this now, and it's certainly made for a more efficient offense, as we've seen through the first 7 games this year.
All right. Transitioning now, let's talk about our stock up, our positive takeaways from this Buffalo Bills 34-10 victory over the Tennessee Titans. Let's just list them off. You'll list one, I'll list one. We'll just keep going. We'll take some from the people in the comment section. What are some positive takeaways you have from this football game?
I'll start with one that maybe isn't like the headliner, but is something that could be a nice little how do you do going forward here, and that's Tyler Bass. Made 6 kicks, 4 extra points, 2 field goals. I know his long was only 30 in this game, but that's got to feel good for that guy to come into this game and make 6 different kicks. And I know, like I said, it's not the headlining stock up item, but I did want to start with that because he did face the questions from the media this week, and he owned up to it. The Bills brought in kickers for competition. He won the competition, as they said on the broadcast, and he had a nice day. So it was also nice to hear the fans cheering for him, even though I do feel like it's a little bit cringy and sarcastic to be doing that. It was nice, and it did actually make me feel pretty good about Tyler Bass in this one. 6 made kicks, so he's my first stock up for the day.
There's a couple of good ones in the comment section that we'll get to in a moment, but While we're on the topic of special teams, how about Broderickton, the kick returner slash punt returner that the Buffalo Bills brought in right there at the end around cutdown day, trading for him, 7th-round pick, solid kick returner. He had that huge kick return where he sort of broke a tackle, spun loose, got to the 39-yard line, set up the Buffalo Bills' first score. And then all season long, and specifically in this game, I feel like Broderickton has really done a good job as a punt returner, fielding punts, protecting the ball. He's got a good, punt return average of 10 plus yards. Anytime you can be in the double digits, that's pretty darn good. And he does a really good job, as I just mentioned, protecting the ball. There was one instance in this game where there was sort of a shank punt by Ryan Stonehouse, and it looked like it might have caromed off of Jamarcus Ingram's leg, and that's a fumble. And he did a really good job of like directing guys, telling guys to move, tracking the football, seeing where it was going. And then once it hit Jamarcus Ingram's leg, he couldn't prevent it with his communication. He dove right on it, and the Buffalo Bills did not turn that ball over. So Broderickton's done a really good job, in my opinion, returning kicks for the Buffalo Bills this year.
Yeah, I think you're doing the first last name combination there with Broderickton.
Oh no, did I screw it up?
It's Codrington is his name.
Codrington. Oh my gosh.
But his first name is Brandon.
Yeah,
so
I think I just typed it wrong in my notes here. Jeez. Okay.
I think you're doing the old first letter combined with the last name, which I kind of like that, Broderickton.
That's his nickname.
Over
like
11
Broderickton Bear, okay? Like
over 11 yards per punt return. Yeah, he's been steady, and he did kind of get a little momentum with that kick return where he had to reverse fields, like you mentioned. So it has been a nice trade for the Bills. And like, I know Gibson's good for the Jets, but you saw him muff a couple last night for them. So they're probably thinking like, yeah, Gibson was their guy. I get that, but it is kind of nice to kind of get a trade with a division rival and see that player work out for you, because when you can take from a division rival and that player then also contributes in a pretty positive way, then it's kind of like a double whammy. So good game for Codrington and a good season so far for him.
We got Pops Mafia coming in saying Spencer Brown. Spencer Brown had some really good blocks, got after it in this game. He's looking like he is really earning that extension that he signed. Dennis K coming in and saying stock up the running back room. Every single running back had a touchdown this game. Ray Davis had a touchdown. Ty Johnson caught a touchdown. James Cook had a touchdown. And I'll tell you what, I said this last week, and I'm not comparing these players, style for style. I'm not comping them player for player, but I really do think the Buffalo Bills can utilize Ray Davis and James Cook in a lot of the ways that the Detroit Lions use David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. So really excited to get Ray Davis more and more incorporated into this offense. And I don't think it's going to take too much away from what James Cook has been giving us.
No, absolutely not. I think James Cook still played close to 60% of the snaps in this one. I mean, these guys can certainly complement each other, right? I mean, early in the season, we saw James Cook getting, 18 to 20 carries. The Bills were sparingly using Ray Davis at the end of games to kind of churn the clock out. It wasn't even really being used as a closer, right? It was really more being used to just run the clock out than anything, because the Bills had those games in hand. But now you see the last couple games, Ray Davis, especially in that Miami game, showing that he can, in that Jets game, showing that he can carry a load and be a nice compliment to James Cook. And also, look, I don't think James Cook looked 100% yesterday, at least to me, just from my eye. He very well could have been, but it didn't quite look like he had that same cutting ability that we saw early in the season. And look, Ray Davis didn't really look worse for the wear with that calf injury either. So the Bills, I think, are best this year when they have that efficient running game going. And I know it wasn't super efficient against the Titans, but they still kind of stuck to it. And I did appreciate that. You had, you had Ray Davis getting his 5 carries. You still had James Cook getting 12 carries. So you had 17 carries for those two guys combined, which is not bad in a game that you were down 10-0 and then ultimately kind of salted away. So I think if you're the Bills, you're probably looking for those guys to maybe combine for around 20 to 25 in a game, and that's probably your ideal outcome. But certainly room for both to contribute. And look, I think at the beginning of the season, we wanted that anyway, right? James Cook can still be a Pro Bowl player. He can still get 15 to 20 touches a game without taking away from Ray Davis contributing in some key spots. So I do like what the Bills have in this running back room.
Bob's Mafia comes in and says, Groot, shame on us. We're 30 minutes into the show and have not mentioned Gregory Rousseau yet. One of his big games, we talk about needing him to be more consistent and show up week after week, but he had one of those big games every couple of weeks that we talk about here. 6 quarterback hits in the game, most quarterback hits in the game for any defensive end this season, any edge rusher this season. He completely took over and dominated that second half, made Mason Rudolph's life a living hell. The combination of Groot, Smoot, and AJ Epinesa, that's a solid trio right now. You're going to be adding Von Miller to that mix soon. The Buffalo Bills from the interior, and we'll talk about the interior in a moment, and from the exterior, they were getting after Mason Rudolph, specifically in that second half of football.
Yeah, I mean, after kind of a no-show for a couple weeks, it felt like with Groot, he really came to play. And like, I will say, like, there were some weird things happening with the officiating this game with the challenge and all that, but they kind of kept the flags for the most part. I thought it was a decently officiated game, which is rare to say right now in the NFL. He was getting held, I thought, a few different times. The refs, held the flags. They didn't throw them. I thought likewise on the other side. I think the Bills had a few holds that they got away with. So they were kind of letting them play on the lines in this game from my eye. And there were a couple other times where I thought Groot was really that close to just getting a sack, but a little bit of a hold maybe prevented it. And that's how dominant he was, because he still made all those plays, those pressures, those hurries, and quarterback hits. And it was nice to see that after maybe a couple down weeks from him. And Smoot really has kind of been steady all year. I feel like he's been a really good contributor. I'll go back to what I said before the season started and at Oliver's press conference, where he said he didn't know how good that guy was and in camp, and it's showing in the regular season now. So we're lucky to have Smoot. I think that he's another guy that I would consider maybe at the end of this regular season saying, hey, maybe come back for another year after this year, depending on
he's got those void years. So the Bills probably have the ability to add some years on. No problem.
Yep.
On the interior, right? Ed Oliver, I didn't really notice him that much. I have to go back and obviously rewatch the game. He was the Bills' second highest graded player per PFF. I don't really take PFF grades into account. I don't think that they're really worthwhile in any way, shape, or form, but he has that going for him. So when I go back and watch, I'm sure he probably had a solid performance. Daquan Jones had a sack. He was notable. Like, just even watching on the television broadcast, he was notable. And Dwayne Carter might be the biggest impactful player on the Buffalo Bills defensive interior right now. That 4th and 2 stop, or that 4th and 1 stop that got the Buffalo Bills the ball back, completely changed the tide of this game. If we're looking at one play that was really the difference in this game, that's probably the play. Like, they had the 3rd and 1 where Bernard and Williams got in there and smoked it. And then you had the 4th and 1 or the 4th and 2, whatever it was there, where Dwayne Carter came in and smoked it. He has been making big plays. He leads all rookie defensive linemen in tackles for loss with 3. He's having himself a heck of a year, and I'm really looking forward to see how he progresses over the next 3-4 years.
I mean, you're starting to see kind of what this draft class can contribute. And I know, like, we haven't seen the best of Cole Bishop yet, but you're starting to see now Keon Coleman, Dwayne Carter contributing in a meaningful way on that 4th down. And these are big plays because the Bills defense did give up some yards in this game, but they did clamp down when they needed to. And in the big moments, outside of that one touchdown down near the goal line that the Titans had, really in the biggest moments, the Bills defense did show up, and they bent, they didn't break. The Titans kind of moved the ball between the 20s a bit. But again, the Bills had the turnovers, the 3, if you count the turnover on downs, like we said with the Carter play, and kept the game clean themselves. So really big moments, these guys are coming up and making plays. It is really nice to see these rookies contributing. I would honestly say that it seemed like Carter's playing even better than Ed Oliver right now. You could make the case that that's the case. I think I saw Uber mention that, and you see RJ in the comment section saying Oliver's non-existent. So glad Carter is actually a player. hasn't been at Oliver's best season so far. Obviously, room for that to improve.
Mhm.
But man, what a stud Dwayne Carter looks like in the making right now.
The linebackers, Terrell Bernard, that injury stinks that we mentioned at the top of the show. Whether it's the run game, we saw it on that third down stop, that fourth down stop. Whether it's the passing game, we see the impact. Just the nose he has, always being around the football, his fumble recovery, and some of the other plays that he made in this game. He's just an absolute menace. And every time he steps on the field, he just shows how valuable he is to this defense. And really hope that we can get him back for Seattle. And Dorian Williams playing really solid as well. And I know he got dinged up late, but the Buffalo Bills linebackers are out there flying around and they are making plays.
Dorian Williams continues to just impress me every week with his improvement in the run game. He's around the ball every single time. I don't know if he's still, up there and leading the league in tackles, but he's going to be still close, I'm sure, after this game with his 10 total combined tackles. He's always there around the ball in the run game. And what can you say about Terrell Bernard? I mean, he is the guy right now that if he goes down, we know what this defense can turn into without him. And we need him. If he misses a game, hate to see him miss a big game like this on the road in Seattle. But if he was going to miss a game, a non-conference game, I suppose is the one that you'd want him to miss after they come back. And I believe, is it Miami the week after Seattle? I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I think it is Miami the week after that. So yeah, look, Terrell Bernard, Dorian Williams, how nice is it going to be when and if Matt Milano comes back later in the season? You've got really a situation where now you can be really flexible with your formations, potentially having those three guys on the field at the same time, depending on who you're playing against a team like the Ravens comes to mind, where you might want to have those three guys on the field at the same time. So anyway, super impressed. Back-to-back seasons now where our third-round linebackers have kind of risen to the occasion. Williams not quite on the level yet of Terrell Bernard, but man, you have to. I don't think anyone can say that they're disappointed in Dorian Williams' play, given the shoes he had to step into.
Looking at some other guys on that defense, Teron Johnson made some plays. Rasul Douglas almost had a pick. Don't necessarily agree with the pass interference that he was called for either.
Yeah,
he's
that was
practically
rough.
running that route for.
I think that was the worst call of the game, to be honest. I think that was the worst flag of the game.
Christian Benford, solid game, had the deflection on the DeMar Hamlin pick. DeMar Hamlin with the pick. All those guys making plays from deep. The Buffalo Bills secondary continues. I mean, Calvin Ritton, and I don't even know how much it was the Buffalo Bills and how much it was just Mason Rudolph and a bunch of aging receivers, but Nuke Hopkins was benched at some point during that game. No one knows why.
I don't know what was going on there.
Calvin Ridley didn't do jack, right? Like Tyler Boyd barely made an impact. Like the receivers just weren't making plays at all for the Tennessee Titans.
Which is weird, right? Because that was an area where you come in, you're like, okay, this is a savvy veteran group. We talked about it in the pregame. That's something that we
spent
thought.
all their money.
They spent all their money. I mean, Tyler Boyd led the way with 5 catches, but they really 3 catches for Josh Weil, 4 catches for Chig Nkonkwo. Like they were really using 4 catches for Nick Vanette. They were just doing that sort of bootleg tight end dump off all day. And the Bills were kind of letting them have it because they were only getting 4 or 5 yards a clip on that. And so it was yeah, sure. You're down by 17 points. We're going to let you have that. And by the way, the Titans, outside of the drive at the end of the game where the Bills were kind of just letting them milk clock, where they had that 7-minute drive, they didn't have a drive over 2.5 minutes in the second half other than that drive at the end. So they really did clamp down in that second half.
All right. Stock down. What were some of the negative takeaways that you had from this football game?
I mean, we'll see about the injuries, right? And it's not really in the control. Obviously, it's not a true stock down in the sense of performance, but just when we feel like this team's maybe getting healthy, then we have this injury with Terrell Bernard. We saw Dorian Williams get nicked up at the end. I think Dwayne Carter also had a minor injury. I could have misread that, but I thought, this is the broadcast. So we'll see about injuries, right? I think just generally, you just don't want to come out of a game like that where you win big with any injuries. And hopefully it sounds like all of these are fairly minor. So I'll say it's a kind of muted stock down on the injury front. Curtis Samuel, obviously headlining that group as well. So
Jared K comes in and says, stock down the broadcast, not showing replays on tight calls. I did not like that crew
It was
of
not, yeah.
McCourty and Barber. The camera angles were not great. The replays were not great. Not CBS's best production there. Pops Mafia says, stock down. If you win the coin toss and take the ball, you can't go 3 and out 3 times in a row to start off. I just,
He's not wrong.
in general, I was fuming when I saw the Buffalo Bills were receiving. I just assumed they lost the toss. I don't care how good your offense is or how bad you're like. I don't care. I do not care. The only way that you take the ball first is if you're looking for some like gut emotional type of pick me up. That's it. Like people were saying, I guess Steve Tasker was telling the broadcast crew it was about the wind in the fourth quarter. But like the win in the fourth quarter is more important to you than the double dip. The double dip to me is the most important aspect of the football game. And anytime you have the opportunity to set yourself up with a double dip, you have to take it. You win the coin toss, you need to defer because you have a chance, no matter what the score is, to score once heading into halftime if you have the ball, and then to score when you come out having the ball, and you can put teams away, or you can get yourself back into games, or you can pull away from teams. It's so powerful. And any team that passes up on that opportunity, I just don't understand it.
Yeah, especially in this game where the wind really it was windy, but it wasn't really going to have a huge factor. Like I can understand it in some of those games where the Bills have played in the winter, and like Belichick has done this where it's truly affecting the passing game, the wind. Then maybe you do that. Okay, we saw that. I was at the game at the Ralph years ago when they played the Giants, the year the Giants won the Super Bowl late in the season. Snowing, raining, the wind was blowing one way. The teams only scored going one direction. The Bills switched sides in the fourth quarter. We're going into the wind, and then Trent Edwards obviously and crew blew that one. Like those are very rare circumstances at this point. Beautiful sunny day with some wind. You defer, defer against the Titans team. Who
you're also playing the Tennessee Titans. You're also playing
that's the thing. The opponent, the Titans. Come on, all right, yes.
Yeah, it just I don't understand it. Someone comes in and says, it was the double dip that allowed us to put the Dolphins away. Imagine if we weren't getting the ball at the end of the half against the Arizona Cardinals. We might not have beaten the Arizona Cardinals week 1 if it had not been for that double dip that we had in that game. So to me, the double dip is super important. Someone mentioned also in the comment section the slow start. Offensively, I was pretty frustrated in the first half. There's some execution things. There was a ticky-tack call on Deion Dawkins on that false start. I do feel like early in the game, and this is a couple of games in a row now, and kudos to him for it clicking at halftime, but Josh Allen is kind of looking to push the ball down the field with wide receivers that aren't exactly natural separators, and he's passing up on some opportunities underneath. And I feel like if you just take those opportunities underneath, defense will start playing you different, and you can start attacking the ball downfield in a more consistent manner. So as much as we want to be mad at Joe Brady, and I do think there are plenty of things to be mad at Joe Brady about, the fact that things like motion and all those different things, play action, not a single play action in the first half, not one, not a single, like Greg Thompson was counting, not a single one. There are plenty of things to be mad at Joe Brady about, and we can talk about that. But some of the blame needs to be shouldered on Josh Allen as well, because there were some layups that he was not taking because he was looking to, mixing up my sports euphemisms here, hit the home run. So the Buffalo Bills need to sort of just settle it down on offense, take the easy stuff, move the ball, and collect points in the first half, because these slow starts that they are getting off to offensively, I feel like it's going to come back and bite you in the ass, especially if you do it against a team like Seattle and the firepower that they have on offense and the guys who can pin their ears back in Boye Mafe and Derek Hall on defense.
Yeah, I mean, if the Bills, I mean, look, we could be saying it's different if they go down and march down and get a touchdown on the opening drive, but then you're still, I don't know. I'm with you. I think Josh Allen struggled a little bit early in this game. I think that it's hard sometimes to put any blame on him, but we do at times we do have to put some blame on him. But like he recovered just like the rest of the team did and bounced back. The defense, like the whole team really collectively bounced back after a slow start, because it wasn't just him. It was a slow start kind of all around, and then the whole team kind of bounced back. So he started, what was it, 4 for 11 or something like that. They were showing on the graphic how like Mason Rudolph was just like out, like, I don't want to say outplaying him because he was taking a lot of
Mhm.
dink and dunks, but that's kind of like what Josh Allen needed to do early in the game as well to kind of get going. And then eventually he did. So it was okay. So yeah, I mean, early in the season, slow starts have been a problem. Like that's kind of been a trend for this team, though.
Mhm.
I would say going back to the beginning of last year, we haven't been the fastest starting team overall going
Yeah.
back to the start of 2023.
And you look at the Buffalo Bills defense, 27th in EPA per play in the first half, second in EPA per play in the second half. And listening to Locked On Bills this morning on my way to work, I think Joe Marino did an excellent job of sort of breaking it down. And Gregory Rousseau even said it post game, like, we're going to go out there and we're going to do our thing. And eventually they're going to have to go off script that, first 10 to 15 plays that they get every game. And they're just going to have to run their plays and we're going to eat them alive once they do. And he's not wrong, because once teams like the Tennessee Titans have to just go out there and run their go-to plays, not the ones they scripted to start the game, the Buffalo Bills absolutely skull what then. Like, they killed them. Like, it was brutal. They didn't score again after that 10th point. The Bills just decimated them in the second half. But again, against teams like the Seattle Seahawks, you don't want to get off to these slow starts. So if you're the Buffalo Bills, and to me, this is on the coaches, because I don't think it's on the players. I think the players are doing what they're told here. This is now 2 games, right? Between the Ravens game and the Titans game, where the broadcasters are telling us, well, the Buffalo Bills are, the Baltimore Ravens are just kind of executing perfectly, going against what the Buffalo Bills like to do and get those pass rushers up the field. Oh, the Tennessee Titans are doing exactly what they need to do, knowing that the Buffalo Bills are going to try to get their pass rushers up the field, and they're running those misdirections, and they're getting big runs up the middle, and they're using their play action to the tight ends, and they're getting these quick hitters off, and the Buffalo Bills are struggling to tackle early on in the game. If you're the Buffalo Bills coaches, maybe throw some surprises of your own out there on the first drive or 2 of the game to throw off the other team's script. And then when the other team gets into their stuff, you just go back to doing what you're doing to dominate. So I think if you're the coaches, you got to take a look in the mirror this week, especially heading into Seattle, and think about maybe some things you can do differently in the first 2 or 3 drives defensively, instead of just being stubborn and going out there and doing what you do well, because eventually it'll work.
Yeah, eventually it'll work. And this kind of ties into it to my next stock down, which is the third down offense. At the end of the day, this box score looks pretty good offensively. The Bills had their first 300 passing yard game of the year. They scored 34 points, but they were still only 3 for 10 on third downs. And then obviously a lot of that, the first half kind of set them behind the bar. But this team on third down this year has not been as good offensively as they were last year. They were the number 1 third down offense conversion wise in the NFL regular season last year. They're bottom 10 so far through 7 games. And obviously slow starts have accounted for as well this lower third down conversion rate. That's something that's going to need to improve as the Bills head towards that stretch of games on the horizon where they got to play the Chiefs, Niners, Lions, etc. That third down offense does need to improve.
All right, some final thoughts here. Tough test next week against the Seattle Seahawks. The Terrell Bernard injury looms large for the Buffalo Bills. The DK Metcalf injury looms large for the Seattle Seahawks. He's going to try to play through that injury that he is dealing with. The Buffalo Bills have to travel across the country. They've got Kenneth Walker to deal with. They've got that Seattle passing game with all those receivers, even with DK Metcalf injured. And they got guys like Derek Hall and Boye Mafe absolutely they killed Kirk Cousins last week. It was brutal. Mike McDonald really knows how to call a defense. So the Buffalo Bills, they have their work cut out for them traveling across the country this week to take on the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, and that Seattle team just dismantled the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta yesterday. The big thing's going to be what's going to be the health of DK, right? Because that team is still very good without him, but that is a big blow if they don't have DK Metcalf. Kenneth Walker is legit. Him and Charbonnet, that combo, although Kenneth Walker is dominating the snaps right now. Kenneth Walker scares me. I like Kenneth Walker a lot. In that draft, it was like Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker were my 2 favorite running backs in that draft. And yeah, he's a force. So tough task for the Bills ahead, and we'll have it all on the pregame
How about the running backs in that draft too, between Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, and was James Cook the third guy off the board? I think Isaiah Spiller might have gone in between there, but
yeah. So.
Yeah, what a trio of running backs there. All three teams hitting on the running backs that they took. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the Air Raid Hour post game show. Thank you guys so much. Like I said, you guys make the show in the comments section. There's a number of things today we would not have talked about, we would not have discussed had it not been for you guys in the comments section bringing it to our attention. If you guys could, there's a number of ways you can help us out here at the Air Raid Hour. You can smash that like button. Number one, helps us with the algorithm. And number two, if you think that there is anyone in your life that would enjoy watching this Cover One post game or our Cover One pregame or anything here at the Cover One Sports Network, click that little share button, copy the link, post it on social media, post it, text it to a friend, email it to a friend, whatever, word of mouth. We would really appreciate you guys sharing all the things that we do here at Cover One Sports Network and here at the Air Raid Hour. Thank you guys so much. And until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comments section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!